This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. Welcome to our broadcast, Uprising in Egypt.
Some of the chants are beautiful.
That child saying, "Down, down with Hosni Mubarak," and there is so much more. It's day 12 as we continue our broadcast special. There are reports that Hosni Mubarak has stepped down as head of Egypt's ruling National Democratic Party, but remains Egypt's president. Hossam Badrawi, who's known as a moderate within the NDP, has been named the party's new Secretary General. He also replaces Gamal Mubarak, Mubarak's son, as head of the NDP's political bureau. Protesters, meanwhile, continue to hold Cairo's Tahrir Square on the 12th day of their uprising against Mubarak's regime. A large crowd remains in the square hours after hundreds of thousands turned out for what was called the Day of Departure, D-Day, against Mubarak's regime. Thousands also gathered for parallel rallies in the cities of Alexandria, Mahalla, and more. The protests in Alexandria are also continuing today. The massive turnout comes in bold defiance of pro-Mubarak loyalists who violently attacked the protesters Wednesday and Thursday. According to Egyptian officials, the death toll from violence in Cairo has reached 11, with more than 5,000 people injured. There are reports top Egyptian officials are in talks to force Mubarak's resignation or limit his presidential authority. But there's no confirmation that Mubarak is on board or that the talks hold weight. Joining us now from Cairo is Democracy Now! Correspondent Anjali Kamat. She has just returned from Tahrir Square, Tahrir, which means liberation. Anjali, it's great to have you with us again. Talk about what's happening in Tahrir Square.
Hi, Amy. It's great to be on. Just got back from Tahrir Square. It is indeed a liberated space, and people are not going to leave Tahrir. It's a very symbolic space to hold on to. Many of the people I spoke to today talked about the importance of why they're still in Tahrir Square, what it means to them, the symbolism of liberating what's known as Liberation Square. One man talked about the kind of solidarity being forged in that space, the politics being waged there. That's the future that he wants to see in his country. That's the kind of Egypt he wants to live in. A young woman talked about how being in that space, being inspired by the thousands and millions of Egyptians who've come to the streets in the past 10 days, really inspiring her and leading her to imagine for the very first time that she might be able to bring children into this world, that this is a kind of Egypt she could bring children into. Another man talked about, for the first time he's tasted freedom, he's smelled freedom, and he's not going to give up now. I mean, we're just hearing that Hosni Mubarak resigned as the head of the NDP. That's not going to satisfy these people. This is not enough. People want Hosni Mubarak to resign, but that's not the only demand. Yesterday, when we were in the square, we were up atop of a building where they dropped a giant banner that stayed for the rest of the day that listed a number of demands of the people, and the resignation of the president is only one of them. It does involve the resignation of President Hosni Mubarak, but also an end to the draconian emergency laws, the formation of a transitional government, changes to the Constitution to allow free and fair elections, and also, very importantly, the prosecution of those responsible for the deaths and the violence over the past 10 days. This is something that nobody in the square is going to forget. People laughed when I asked if they thought, Hosni Mubarak would be able to stay in power. And, they said, we don't know what he's thinking. How are people in Egypt going to forget what he's done just over the past 10 days, even if they're able to forgive his crimes of the past 30 years?
Anjali, we are getting reports right now that BBC World is saying Egyptian state TV reports monitored by the BBC suggest President Mubarak did not quit as party leader after all. Now, that is Egyptian state TV, but it's BBC reporting it. Anjali, they're also reporting, BBC, that Swedish broadcaster SVT has confirmed that reporter Bert Sundström was stabbed in Cairo. He's now being operated on. That that's I think, a couple of days old, but it goes to the issue of the reporters that are under so much danger. More than 100 have been hurt or harassed, and of course today the latest news of an Egyptian reporter who has died as a result of his wounds.
That's right. I mean, there's really two parts to this story. On the one hand, the incredible harassment of anyone who looks like a journalist, particularly a foreign journalist, but of course the journalist who succumbed to his wounds and died was an Egyptian journalist. There's been incredible harassment, and I know you spoke earlier with someone from the Committee to Protect Journalists about what's been happening in Egypt, this kind of harassment. Even today, it was very difficult to get into the square. I had to conceal my flip camera, but I was able to get in with the flip camera. But, you know, even while using it towards the end, I started to get nervous because most of the people within the square are incredibly friendly and supportive and want their stories to get out to the world. But there are also a lot of people wandering around, big men with cell phones and pointing their cameras in your face as you're filming. And I heard different reports that these might be pro-government thugs. And at a certain point, there were 3 such men filming me as I was recording an interview with someone else and on their cell phones as well. So there is this environment, an atmosphere of intimidation that people inside Tahrir Square are trying very hard to stamp out in a very peaceful manner. I mean, the other part of this is what you just mentioned about Egyptian state TV. Not sure what actually happened with Hosni Mubarak, but, you know, a lot of people inside the square are very concerned about the kind of reports being shown on Egyptian state television, because this is the media that most of the country is getting. And most of the country is not getting a true picture of what's happening in Tahrir Square. Most of the people who watch state television are not getting a real picture of what's happening at these protests. There's rampant false information being spread about people organizing the protests being foreign agents, being infiltrators, agents of Iran or Israel, just absurd accusations. But, you know, people who are not at the protests and who might just want life to go back to normal might be inclined to believe this. And I think people within the square, one of their main demands is also for, you know, to have more independent media. And in fact, today we spoke to there's a media tent inside Tahrir Square that's been set up for the past week, and they're disseminating, collecting stories of people within the square, people who were wounded, people who were attacked, people who were injured, and just ordinary people who are within the square, asking them why they're there and creating an archive of this and trying to distribute it all over the world so that people get a true picture of what's going on inside, even as international journalists are being cracked down on and not allowed to get in.
We're talking to Anjali Kamat, Democracy Now!'s Anjali Kamat, in one part of Cairo, just back from Tahrir Square, and joined for this 2-hour broadcast by Sharif Kouddous, who's been broadcasting for the last week. Sharif, would you like to add to Anjali's description of what's going on right now? You going to Tahrir Square earlier today, though you had stayed the other night, and actually not being able to wait to get in.
Well, I just wanted to add that, you know, there certainly are these people that are around that are trying to intimidate people. There's no question that they've got infiltrators inside the square who are filming. You see them walking around with cell phones and very kind of methodically filming different faces. I actually approached one who was filming me very closely and moved on. I asked him, why are you taking a picture of me? And he just kind of scurried off. And we later, I believe, saw him being dragged off to be handed to military custody. So there is this kind of atmosphere there but the people in Tahrir are trying to fight back against this, and they really want to speak out. It's amazing that when you pull out your camera, how many people want their voices to be heard. They've been stifled for so long. It's been such a clampdown for so many years, so many decades, that when you do pull out a camera, people are just scrambling to try and get their voices heard, to say their part. And also to the point that Anjali made about what the public is seeing. The Mubarak regime has launched what is turning out to be an effective campaign of propaganda, blaming the protesters. Well, first of all, they have this whole crazy conspiracy Iran Hamas stuff going on, which is just ludicrous. But also, everything's been closed. The banks have been closed. This revolution started near the end of the month. People haven't been paid their salaries. There's bread shortages. So what the Mubarak regime is trying to do is to antagonize the public and make the public suffer. And what many in the public I'm hearing is they're starting to blame the protesters for these woes instead of when it's actually Hosni Mubarak they should be blaming for these problems. And so as Mohammed said in the earlier hour about Egypt State TV going even beyond propaganda and just being an arm of the executive branch, I think that's exactly right.